Alright. We're gonna get through this rupsy one way or another.
We're gonna get through it.
Am I taking too much time? Do you want me to go like, I don't have to spend a lot of time on it. I just wanna make sure we didn't misunderstand it.
Yeah, sure. Well, keep going.
So, in addition, we talked a lot of
It's gonna be
examples. So yesterday we learned about due diligence pretty much. But that is, like, if you're gonna cancel, 80% of the time it happens there, right? And then the other 20%, maybe even less, where you have appraisal issues. Like typically in this market, this kind of market where values are going up, appraisers haven't really been too hard on sellers. But nonetheless, there is an appraisal condition. So quickly, let's explain. What's the difference between an appraisal and a financing condition?
So appraisal is if the appraiser comes in lower, then you can back out or try and negotiate a lower price. Because basically, they're gonna have to make up the difference in cash with the loan. And they may not have it.
Right. So what if the appraisal comes in higher? Man, we should cancel. This appraisal is wrong.
No. Then the seller's saying, dang it, I should have held out for more.
Yeah.
But
So-
9 times out of 10, I don't even do, the seller sometimes don't even see the appraiser.
No.
Appraisal.
Yeah, and if it's higher,
You don't say anything.
just say, yep,
Came
they
in
look
great.
good. They'll be like, okay.
Yeah.
It could be like 10 grand higher or something, but
You
in
don't
my
do that.
experience, people are pushing the values so much in our recent market that you usually don't have it pricing below. But
Yeah.
I could see my listing price appraising higher because square footage and acreage and all that would justify it. It's just all the
It's the
little
condition.
finish items and it's the usage of the square footage. But appraisers don't really take that into consideration.
That's low.
The flow. Okay, now, when we're looking at appraisal conditions, how is our house primarily gonna be appraised?
It's usable square footage. So basically,
Well, remember the hint was, what are our 3 different ways of valuing a property?
Comps,
Comps,
location,
location.
condition.
No, that's what
Nope.
affects the sale.
Sale.
comps, cloning.
What are the 3 ways of appraising value of a property? Come on.
180 days.
No,
No.
those are
No, it's
I thought it was
comps,
comparable sales.
like comparable sales.
Market, the market one?
That's what you just said.
No, the cost to replace
Oh, yeah.
approach.
Oh, yeah.
Or the
Substitution,
income
right?
approach.
Substitution.
Those are the 3 different kinds of appraisals. So if you're an income property and you're making $1 billion a year, you're gonna have a really high value.
Yeah.
But if you're making, less, it really doesn't matter what the property costs you to build, it's what it's making you.
Like it's
If
a
you have
business,
s-
like a
No
business.
cost, cloning, and commercial, right?
Yep.
That's what we just said, right?
Well,
No,
he's
you were
saying-
saying 180 days back. You're giving
Oh, no,
me-
I said that the second time. The first time I was said cost
Yeah.
compared to cloning.
Yeah, I said yes or comparable.
Oh, okay.
I said yes. But you're giving me all the details.
We're more
back.
res-
I was just thinking like big picture.
Yeah.
Heard.
Big picture is they use the comparable
I was trying to
sale
remember-
approach 99% of the time. Now, I did have a ranch that I had listed out in Benjamin.
There were no comparables.
There were no comparables. The guy has 14 acres with a fence that could stop a car and a 45,000 square foot barn and 9,000 square foot house. There's just nothing out there like that. So I just said, well, what did it cost you to build? Okay, we'll start there. Because it was just, you have to look at the price of land and the cost. So sometimes your homes will value that way. But most of the time, it's gonna be comps of comparable homes. And then we'll look at it, you go 180 days, basically, 6 months back, within 1 mile. Preferably though, within the same neighborhoods, same communities, has to be within the same cities. There's
Same
definitely
style.
parameters to it all. Similar styles, Rambler, all those things take into consideration. All right, so whenever you look at it, sometimes your client wants you to basically appraise the property before you put in an offer. one, you don't appraise value. You can say, well, you know, I'll look at it to make sure you have, you know, a good idea. But if it's got 10 offers, it really doesn't matter what it's gonna appraise for, it's what the competition is pushing the value to.
And in the contract that protects you, this clause with the appraisal clause, you know, don't worry about what it comes in at, because if it does come, we have an out in the contract.
Yeah.
If it,
Because sometimes I think, like I've told you guys to say that, well, you know, I wanna make sure you never overpay for a property, so I'm gonna check some comps before we write up an offer. But ultimately, those comps are pushed aside if you have too much competition, and maybe the seller just doesn't give a rip and he's not gonna lower the price. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what you think it's worth, it's what they're gonna sell it for. But for all those reasons, that's why you have an appraisal condition. Say, well, listen, appraisal is about what's fair. And so I'm willing to pay what the fair market value is for this. So if the appraisal comes in low, at what price are you obligated to buy the property at, according to the contract?
the price you offered.
The price you offered, doesn't matter. If you offer 300 and the appraisal comes in at 290, you're still under
Still under
contract at
contract.
300.
Yep.
It's just your loan's only gonna be based off of 290. And so, I think I said that before, you're gonna have to bring in the difference. Most people can't bring in it, or they're unmotivated to bring in it. So at that point, the appraisal condition can kick in, and then you have the, as it says in section A here, the right to cancel, if things don't work out.
So first you try to negotiate with the seller to price it down.
Yeah, so you can always, you know, accept, counter, or reject. So but you're gonna ask the seller, hey seller, looks like your property ain't worth that much, you know, basically can you come down? And if they're adamant, say, well, provide the appraisal comps, and so you can get the property different, otherwise, you know, my client can't pay more than, or won't pay more than appraised value. And you just go from there. But remember yesterday we talked a lot about timing. The challenge here again is when you look, where's all my, it's through over here. When you look at timing, remember that's 1 week, so that's 1, 2, and 3 weeks. If this is the due diligence sorry, I'm just writing my initials. If the due diligence is expiring in 2 weeks, and we've waited to the last minute, generally speaking, it is the practice of the banks not to order the appraisal until after your inspection period. Anyone want to guess why?
Because that's when the most likely you're gonna cancel.
Yeah, because remember, so we had a FHA appraisal done on Gabby's last deal that just canceled. Do you know what the cost of that appraisal was?
Maybe 300?
No, it was $695.
Oh.
$695. And ultimately, the financing, it wasn't the appraisal, but it was the financing that fell through. So who's gonna pay for that?
Buyer.
The buyer pays for that. But in our case, guess who paid for it?
Caleb,
Caleb ate it. His bank doesn't pay for it. It literally charges his credit card when he orders an appraisal. So Caleb literally paid a $695 appraisal for your pal Benjamin.
So,
Who's Caleb?
how can
Caleb's
they,
our preferred lender.
how can they protect themselves from that? Like, do they always
Well,
have
one
to
of
pay
the
out of
one of the
pocket?
ways a lender protects himself is like,
they make them pay it up front.
yeah, they usually, most banks, if you go through a bank, they're gonna say, yeah, what's your credit card number? And you pay for it.
Oh, and he doesn't do that.
So that's another reason why Caleb's been a good lender for us, because your first-time home buyers have absolutely no money, you know, they barely have a down payment. We're having the seller pay all their closing costs, and then we're getting Caleb to pay the appraisal up front.
Yeah, but if you think how many sales could fall through at financing, like, does he always have to eat the cost?
He does.
He does.
Oh, wow.
That's why, well, he doesn't, if it's really your buyer's fault, he's not gonna eat the cost. Like if for no reason your buyer just says, I'm done, they'll probably charge you. But, so the bank could order the appraisal week one, but if you're still negotiating repairs and you have the highest chance of cancellation before due diligence expires, they just don't bother with it. So what happens, as soon as due diligence has been resolved, doesn't have to be at the deadline, but as soon as the repairs are resolved and you're moving forward, that's when you should order the appraisal.
So you're supposed to keep in touch with the lender and let them know?
Yes, you are. Well, or with Kristen, our transaction coordinator, and you say, Kristen, like you have to tell Kristen when you're in negotiations. You have to share those addendums with her, because then she'll pass them on to the lender, all the addendums, the extensions, the change of deadlines. The lender needs to know what's going on, because they're, it's like a hand in a glove. They're part of the transaction to buy your house. So that's what we call you gotta have the increased communication between everybody. Now the appraisal generally is gonna take at least a week. Sometimes they can do it faster, like in slower times in the market. But, and we have banks, those are the big banks, we have credit unions who do it. Banks are gonna typically be the slowest. They're the 9 to 5 kind of stuff. You really don't get a hold of anybody afterwards. Credit unions are very similar as well. Then you have lenders like Caleb. Veritas Funding is basically a direct lender. The difference between them and banks is banks and credit unions have savings accounts, mutual funds, or they have other investing options. Where lenders, they have the same loan programs, but all they do is loans. But a lender, one difference about a lender though is that they do everything what's called in-house. So they have their underwriters in-house, and so they underwrite it, and Veritas funds it with their own money. But they're not a portfolio, so they don't keep it, so that generally within 3 months or so, they are selling it to, maybe they sell it to like Wells Fargo or somebody big, who then will keep the loan.
Even the credit unions and banks sometimes don't even keep them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's usually these big banks, like the, Chase banks, the they went out of business. The Wells Fargo's, Bank of America's, those are typically the ones that keep those, because they're also receiving billions of dollars a year in federal funding. So. Okay, now you have brokers, loan brokers. They don't fund it in-house or keep it. They're just literally just brokering a deal. They're the middleman. So they find banks that may have the best deal, the best program, and they broker it out. Direct lenders like Veritas Funding have become much more popular. One of the reasons is they can fund faster, they can close faster because everything is in-house. Where if you go with a broker, they're just like, they're the middleman, there's the buyer, and then there's the bank. And they ask, and they get the answer back, and then they tell them, everything's intermediated. Okay. So we've preferred generally the lender. They're faster, more flexible, and generally these guys are commission. They work on commission. That's why Caleb will take your call, and try and be flexible for you. Is he perfect? No. My general experience with any lender is nobody's perfect. It's always hard to find a good one.
Wait, so where do they get the commission from?
The close.
Close.
Who pays the commission? The seller? No.
Remember the closing costs?
Yeah.
And then they'll sell the loan and sometimes they'll make money back on it.
Yeah, so the commission is built into the rate.
Oh, okay.
There's a back-end commission that's built into the rate, and then there's fees, points. If I said I'm charging you a point on my loan, and basically charging you 1% of the loan amount to cover
That's a
cost. Wow. Yeah.
Just varies. But that's why he has some flexibility as far as like helping people with closing costs.
This is law.
No, that's why.
So we could,
That's why closing
I'm
consists
kind
of
of,
prevention sometimes.
so we could take more time on this, maybe I could do 3 hours on that alone, okay? But just, we've chosen to work with our preferred lender, as we call them. It's Veritas Funding, because they've been fast, flexible as far as when we can contact them, and the customer service is better. You know, banks, everybody's nice, that's not what we care about. It's can you get it done? Can you get it done in the timeline I need it to get done? Where these guys are gonna be a lot less flexible.
But your client has the,
Yeah, you say, well, whatever.
They're-
You know,
they're in charge.
everybody usually works with a bank, so we tell your clients, say, would you have a credit union or somebody you like? They'll say, yeah. Why don't we try them and try our preferred lender, and you guys can decide. Definitely recommend our preferred lender because he's proven results, great customer service, and he can help you. Okay. All right. So as far as timelines, if you've come down to the very last minute, remember, you're still working with other people, so if the last final day you work out that due diligence, it's gonna take a few days for the appraiser even to get out, and then to turn it around, and again, you're cutting it close again. So, you can do two things. Either extend your deadlines, or just be on top of it. My experience is, even when you extend your deadlines, everybody goes to the end, so just get on top of it. Like day one. So this is part of what you need to emphasize to your people, because they're not reading the contracts, but you need to emphasize that, look, these dates are very critical, and there is a clause which says time is of the essence. It's a legal term saying that, look, there is a day at which you don't get an extension. Now, yes, we can extend that, but generally you can't extend it an hour before it goes. I've had people send me extensions or send me the paperwork, like let's say the due diligence or the appraisal came in and they're sending me their counter offer at 4 o'clock and everything expires at 5. As a listing agent, all I have to do is ignore it till 5, and then I reject it. And then it goes back to the original contract. Gave them, in essence, I just boxed them in because it gives them no time to back out. Well, sure, they can back out, you're just not gonna get your earnest money back. So be careful with that. Like, well, I sent it before 5 o'clock. No, it's not about sending it in before 5. It's about getting it signed before 5. And I was under no obligation to turn around within 60 minutes to get you a signature. And a lot of agents send it over thinking, well, that's not fair. Well,
Life isn't fair.
you sucked at negotiations.
Suck it up.
You know, so that's where you get in trouble. Yeah, you guys are like, and I put you in a trance. Like,
we're just
wow.
like thinking.
Tell me what you're thinking, other than about your kids.
I was
and
just thinking about my
families.
deals and maybe like last minute things that I've had received or trying to get through and stresses of time frame. What you do to
Okay.
do better.
So there's two ways, right? If it's them giving it to you last minute, don't feel any stress to respond quickly. Like, oh my gosh, seller, we have to sign this because they asked us and their due diligence is expiring. Who gives a rip? It's not your due diligence, it's theirs, and they wait the last minute. That's their problem, not yours.
Yeah.
You have no obligation to respond. Well, we only gave you a response time to 6 o'clock. Well, that's your problem, not mine. I can't respond in 2 hours. You know, I'm at my kid's recital. Call you back after. Or I'll call you back tomorrow, business day. Oh, but our thing's expired. Well, that sucks, doesn't it? Should have not waited till the last minute. You know these things take time, right? Now, when it's your buyer and you're freaking out and you're sending it over, well, you will all be put in those positions. So when you're talking to your buyers, communicate. You're that proverbial watchtower. And you're like, okay, Titanic, I see the iceberg, I see it. may want to slow down, hurry up. This is getting like really
Well,
urgent.
it's hard, because you'll be on top of it, and then you'll tell your clients, and they'll say, okay, I'll sign it,
And then they don't.
and then they don't.
Well, here's the thing, is as long as you've communicated and documented your communication, they'll never be mad at you.
Well, they can still.
That's
be
not
mad at you.
true.
No,
Always mad at you.
I still swear they'll never be mad at you if you've truly communicated to them
Yeah, you're
every
supposed to.
single day.
Mhm.
Over communicate to the point they know exactly what's going on. And every day you say, hey, the due diligence is coming up. These are the things that we need to be working on. You haven't ordered your inspection yet. So once that's done, not only is it gonna take a few days for the guy probably to get out there, it's gonna take, if there is something that's wrong, we're gonna have to negotiate that, and that may take a few days. And we need to finish negotiations prior to the expiration date. So I just wanna give you a heads up. Ball's in your court. Let me know if I can help you in any way. If I need to order that for you, whatever, let me know. I sent you, next day, I sent you an extra copy of the due diligence inspection sheet again. I just wanna remind you of all the available options that are at your disposal for inspecting this house. Sellers aren't obligated to pay for anything, and you're not obligated to do any inspections. I highly recommend it though. Again, the ball's in your court. Let me know how I can help. I'd recommend Pillar to Post. There's other companies out there, but again, let me know. I'm here to help. If you don't get this done and you decide to do it last minute, I'll do everything I can for you. But again, they're under no obligation to rush to sign any counter offers that you present if the expiration expires or if we're near the deadline. And you may be out earnest money, or you may be, forced to accept a house with a leaking roof or something like that. And I wouldn't want that to happen for you. You say stuff like, I wouldn't want that to happen. I'm here to help. Let me know how I can help. And if you said that every day, hey, remember, if this expires and you cancel after the deadline, you're gonna lose your earnest money of $1,000. And I'm telling you because I don't want you to be blaming me. We're on the same team here. I'm here to help you, but I'm advising. I can't take action without your permission. Let me know. Now, if you said that every single day, and every day you gave them a little more information, count down the days, there'll never be a time where they'll blame you. And if they are, they're psychotic. But if they did, you can say, look, I literally documented, pull up Boomtown, every single day that I left you a message, and this is what I said, left you a message, this is what I said. Don't just call and not leave a message. Leave a message. They'll hear it. And most people are gonna respond. But you have to tell them what is happening, what they need to do, and what will happen if they don't do it. Or even what will happen when they do it. You gotta give them, like, hey, if you do this, this is what's gonna happen. You're gonna meet the inspector, you're gonna walk the property. You can determine if you wanna do additional inspections afterwards. But if something comes back that we need to fix it, I'm gonna go to bat for you. I'm gonna negotiate, whatever, radon, blah, 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 fixing the kitchen sink, the leak, change the garbage disposal, whatever those things may be, I'm gonna go to bat for you. But I need you to do this quickly so I have time, because what I found in my experience as a realtor is that it often will take 2 or 3 revisions of a repair contract in order to get everybody on the same page. Please, it's important that we act now.
So, I think, when we say there's no obligation for the sellers, when they do sign this, they agree that seller agrees to cooperate with buyer's due diligence. But I think, if the deadline is past the due diligence point, I mean, it's probably within reason, but still, they've contractually agreed to cooperate.
Contractually agree to sign anything. Because what you're doing is
Cooperating means letting them in to do the inspection.
Yeah, that's
not
letting-
necessarily agreeing to do the repairs.
Not agreeing to the repairs,
Yeah.
for sure.
Remember,
But what does,
we talked about as is. When you sign that contract, you're buying the house as is. What the due diligence period is, it's to find out what as is means. Oh, as is means that the roof leaks. As is means that the garbage disposal doesn't work, that there's a leak under the master bedroom sink, that the faucet drips in the bathroom. Then once you understand what as is truly means, then it's up to you to decide, you know what, I don't like as is anymore.
So I would like just a few things to be repaired. And so the sellers generally agree, because in the grander scheme of things, if you do, let's say $1,000 in repairs, but you know, it's a $400,000 house, that's not that big a
Drop the
deal
bucket.
to get it done. It's worth it to get it done, especially when you look at what they're paying
And their
in
next,
fees
will
just to
probably
get
have the
it.
same
See-
issues.
I think I would think that cooperating with buyers' due diligence has to do with being responsive as well. Because I've had that situation happen. We were able to get in for the inspections, we were able to do that. But then, like I said yesterday, they ignored us, or they were so busy that they couldn't get back to us. And we didn't hear back from them for 2 days. Me constantly calling, texting, emailing.
Yeah.
Isn't there
That's-
usually a
that's
time
not
deadline that
cooperating.
they have to
Well,
get
and
back
that's
to you
not-
by?
Well, that's not providing good service either. There needs to be some communication, but
That was
Well,
more the agent.
I feel like
That was
that's
more
not
the agent.
cooperating
So,
with
so,
buyers' due diligence.
so in your example, I remember you telling me that you ended up talking to the sellers.
Directly to the
And then the
seller.
sellers were very cooperative.
Yeah.
So the fault isn't in the sellers, because the sellers
It's in
were
their
definitely fault is in the agents. Here's the challenge. So what everybody interprets as being cooperative and responsive are different. Look, I responded to you within 24 hours, isn't that enough? But if you expect a response within, let's say 6, because you're on a more urgent timeline than I am.
Mhm.
So what's a
Urgency
proper
changes.
response time? Is it 24 hours? Is it 48 hours? You have to realize that people are living in different circumstances. Maybe I'm on a cruise ship while you're doing your due diligence, and you know what? I'm just not checking my phone that much.
They'd flop on the hood of the car, get that expedited real quick.
So, you know, when we get into port, I'll check my emails then, but I'm only checking them once every other day because I don't want to be burdened by that. And then you're expecting me to DocuSign? You know, you just never know. Okay, so cooperative generally means that, yes, they're gonna allow you access to the property, but again, they don't have to, it's not at a drop of a dime and say, hey, can I come over today for 5 hours?
Yeah.
Could you go tomorrow? Because I have a birthday party with my kids today at that same time. It's not gonna work. That's not being uncooperative, that's just
schedule.
scheduling.
Has to be reasonable, yeah.
So, it's not that they don't wanna let you, it's just you asked at a very inconvenient time. So, what I'm saying is that's why we act quickly, is because you have to realize that those things are happening in everybody's lives, to act quickly. So, and as far as signing the contract, if they ignore your contract, it's like any other contract, that's basically a
Yeah.
rejection.
Yeah, and see, that's fine as well.
So typically what I do in terms of repairs is do a lot over email and verbal. So when I have repairs that come up, I send them an email first. And then I call them, I say, hey, I just wanna let you know that we've got the inspection back and we're gonna be asking for some repairs. I wanted to review them with you first before making it formal. I don't generally like, I find we can save a lot of time by just talking it through and getting a feel for them. But if they told me up front that, you know, like my current seller, absolutely, just don't even ask. Like, yeah, Gabby, you have that basically, right? Don't even ask, and yet we still asked. But it always,
Because that's what we do.
because that's what we do. And you're like, but you told them you weren't gonna ask. Whatever,
Yeah.
obedience, right? That's your fiduciary. So you say, okay, well, I ask. The problem is when you're doing something and you feel that your client isn't being
Reasonable.
reasonable, that's when it's hard to go to bat for them.
Yeah, I know. I had an agent once yell at me. He's like, what in the world are you doing? I'm like, I'm just being obedient to my clients, like I'm supposed to be.
I know, but we'll get much better results if we can come meet eye to eye, like if we can be truly, emotionally and mentally be on the same page as our buyers, or at least act like it when you're in negotiation with the client. You have to act like it's as important to you as it is to them. You know, are you kidding me? What do you mean you're not gonna fix the sink? That's like a $20 fix. Why wouldn't you do it to save this deal that's $400,000? Come on.
Come up with
You know,
a offer.
that's how you need to be over the phone. Like this is, we're not asking for a lot. Look, there were like 30 items on the inspection report. We're only asking for 5. we think we're being really reasonable here. And you know,
Problem is
I'm
when-
looking at all these things, and I think you could pretty much get a handyman, send them over there for about 3 hours, and they're all gonna be done. You know, you're talking minimal dollars, but to my client, it's really important. You'd understand that, right? You gotta go to bat for them, you gotta talk, you gotta be on their side.
It is hard when they ask for 35 things, and there are only 30 things on the inspection list.
I know. Well, you know, let's
Like the
let's
cement
talk.
circle on around the tree,
Yeah,
it's
no, I told you.
lopsided.
I told you I sometimes emotionally struggle because I wouldn't ask for that. That's pretty dumb. Like, just go out there and change it yourself. But whatever.
We had one,
Okay.
they wanted all the light bulbs working.
Okay,
And we did,
so
that's where-
let's read financing since we've been talking about it. Let's actually read it. So financing condition.
I guess my turn.
You want to start it off?
Sure.
Chris?
No financing required. Buyer's obligation to purchase a
Oh,
property.
wait a minute. We didn't read the appraisal. Sorry.
Oh, you kind of talked about it, we just didn't read it.
Let's read it just to make sure we read it.
Appraisal condition. Buyer's obligation to purchase the property is, or is not, conditioned upon the property appraising for no less than the purchase price. This condition is referred to as the appraisal condition. If checked in the affirmative sections 8.2a and 8.2b apply, otherwise they do not.
Okay, right, so if you say no, then the right to cancel doesn't apply. So Carol, A, right to cancel, buyer's right to cancel.
If after completion of an appraisal by a licensed appraiser, buyer receives written notice from the lender or the appraiser that the property is appraised for less than the purchase price, A, notice of appraisal value, buyer may cancel the rep by providing written notice to seller with a copy of the notice of appraisal value no later than the financing and appraisal deadline referred to in section 24C. Whereupon, the earnest money deposit shall be released to buyer without the requirement of further written authorization from seller.
Okay, so what did we learn there? What are the steps that you would take as a buyer's agent to cancel a deal?
Receive, turn in written notice.
What is written notice?
Usually that.
Is that an email?
No, it's
No,
a
it's
pre-approved form
Yeah, it's
in
a
our
form.
form category.
It's a notice of cancellation,
Notice of cancellation.
and then you have to say the reason.
And then you have to apply the copy of the appraisal.
Yes, that's the part that no one ever does, with a copy of the notice of appraised value. So something from your lender stating that the appraisal, there was a discrepancy. Sometimes it's if you have a copy of the appraisal, that's the most valid.
And candidly, sometimes it's just easier to just cancel due to financing conditions. Because technically that's the truth, because you can't close paying the extra money difference, and then you don't have to provide anything.
Yeah, so Carol brought up an interesting point, which is basically appraising and financing deadlines are usually the same day. But your final conditional approval actually isn't the same day. It's usually like a couple days later, because once the appraisal comes in, then it goes back to underwriting, and then underwriting usually wants updated pay stubs and everything. Then once they get those pay stubs, then it goes to final underwriting, and then when it's approved, then they clear it to close, or cleared for docs, right? And they can print docs, send out the closing disclosure, get that going. So there's still a chance that financing may be denied, even though the appraisal deadline's on that same day. It just happens. So if you were in a really competitive scenario and you wanted to do one little thing to, outside of just paying more for the house, you could technically just say there's no appraisal deadline, but still put financing. So here's the risk. If your appraisal comes in low, you can't cancel, but you could still cancel because
Financing.
if you're gonna have to pay more down, then you'd be denied because you don't have the down payment. That's in the case that if you don't have the down payment, but if you do have the down payment, like if you were putting 20% down and it came a little higher, maybe you only put 18% down now, but you'd have to cover the difference. So there's sometimes there where you could get away with that if you have no additional money.
Well, and financing condition is so vague that really you could totally qualify for the loan and still cancel for financing condition because you didn't get the interest rate you wanted.
Yeah, they like the terms.
And you don't have to explain anything to them.
Wait, I've noticed with new construction, sometimes the appraisal comes lower than what the builder's trying to sell the property. Especially if you put a lot of.
I haven't noticed that ever, because everybody I've ever done it with in the last
Is that-
4 years is
Well,
coming
if you
right at
put
value.
if you put a lot of like finishes, like, you know, special finishes that are really expensive.
I would say that could be true in a downsizing market, but with our market increasing, most everyone already has like 10%.
I
but-
noticed
but
that
no.
a lot in Vineyard
Well,
though.
But think of how would an appraiser appraise a new construction?
Just on cost, wouldn't they?
It's the cost to build. Like, it's literally the cost to build.
Because it's brand new, there's been no,
You bought it from a guy who just built it, he's itemized everything on a piece of paper, it's the cost to build.
so did you have that problem?
And of course, there's
Everybody in my
profit in there,
neighborhood
it's
has that
not,
problem.
Really?
Yeah, the properties are selling for more than the appraised value.
Interesting.
For the,
So what
maybe
are-
for the,
New
like,
construction.
she's,
What
No,
those
it's-
Because
saying-
everybody,
So how
because
would-
everybody's putting different finishes, right?
yeah, if
Some
you're
of
putting
them
a
are high.
comparable approach and somebody puts
Custom
$30,000
Mhm.
So how are they
upgrades.
making?
You
how
want-
are
they wanna
getting
I
more?
don't know,
Close, you never
no, they
close.
say, yeah, it's fine.
no, but they paid 30,000 or whatever over the appraised value.
So the people have to come out of pocket, basically.
Well, I'm just saying, the last 4 years I've been doing that, I haven't had one coming
They
under
need
value.
a new appraiser. I'm just doing it wrong.
I know in the very beginning of the upswing, the appraisers we were seeing more of that. But now that it's been,
'Cause
for a
we-
few years now, the appraisers have been pretty on top of it. And if
Yeah.
even if it's in within 2-3%, they've been giving it to us.
I could see that happening because honestly, those upgrades, they're not giving it to you
Right.
at cost. They're
That's
making
true.
they're
You're
making
paying
a
out of
margin
pocket,
on that.
basically.
So the cost of the home
Yeah, but
is
that is part of the
value.
The margin of a builder, the profit they make is part of the cost. No one does anything for free. But what they charge is cost.
Well, the value. I mean, the value.
I would like
of
to
the
see that
home
proof,
is-
but I'm not saying it is, I'm just curious, because if any builder can't justify the price of their homes,
They're
there may be
gonna
one or
selling
two
it.
that would buy it, but most people wouldn't buy it unless it appraises.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I don't understand, like, what would be happening there.
Because most
That's
people can't
interesting.
afford to pay the difference either.
No.
Interesting.
Well, in this market too, like what's happening is let's say you go under contract at, let's say, 300, that's your original contract, then you go to the design center, right? And
Now it's 330.
and now it's, yeah, it increases 30,000 because of all your upgrades and you're at 330. And then it takes 10 months to build your house. Well, how much appreciation are we receiving in a year?
Last year was over 10.
10.2%.
Yeah, 10.2%, median price, or roughly 9%, so 9 to 10%, right? So, okay, math
Yeah, even
teacher, 9% over 10
27.
months. Well, let's for easy math, 10% increase would technically be $363,000 if it had a 10% increase. So at one sense, we're locking the price in 2018 number, but when we actually go to close, we're at a 2019 number. And so that's another reason why new construction is generally comes in at value, because you lock it in today's price, but you actually close a year from now. And with the way appreciation's gone, I don't see why a house would ever have any trouble
appraised.
appraising.
So you're saying that a house that has all the upgrades and a house that doesn't have all the upgrades still appraised at the same value?
No.
No, I'm
No.
not saying it appraises the same value. That's why they use the cost to build approach. So you have, this is the cost. This is literally the cost to build the house.
Okay.
Yes, profit is part of the cost because you have to pay people to do things. It's the cost to replace it. It's not just,
free.
we're not just talking materials, because we're not talking wholesale prices. We're just talking, what's the cost? Like if I was gonna go buy that,
Yeah, because you
lot.
can't just deliver all the materials and just set them on the
So I
lot
guess
and have
the
it be the
problem
same value
comes,
as if it
maybe
had
the
been
problem
built.
comes then if you wanna sell it the next year, it won't appraise for what you paid for.
Well, it's just like a new car, right? Like
Right?
brand new off the lot,
They lose value.
Yes,
Just gotta
builders definitely have a premium, right? Because of,
They're beautiful, they smell
So
perfect,
beautiful,
no
I
one's
love
been
it.
in here. And then a year later, if they wanna sell, then.
it's amazing how much more someone will pay because they want the cabinets gray instead of white, and they aren't gonna buy that one that was just finished that failed because they wanna make some just minor alterations to it. I'm like, you really wouldn't just take that one, you're gonna wait a year.
Well, and some people like the idea of just brand new, no one's lived there and there's no crumbs.
Yeah,
in
there's
the
little
vents.
OCD people
like
out
these
there
little-
like, oh my gosh,
Or-
you know,
Builders did.
I don't
or
want
the
anybody
fact-
sleeping ever in my bedroom, it's
Or they
like-
like the idea of doing it themselves, they can have whatever they want the choice, they're artsy people, and they want
Yeah,
to design.
but
That's part of
that
the
goes all
platform.
back why you're paying a premium. So one of the tricks is the cost actually, like if you get other houses in the area that are maybe 10 years old, the cost looks equal to these older houses. I'll call them older houses. They look about the same. But remember, they're not really the same. Because the older house has a yard finished, right?
Basement finish,
It's got a fence,
basement.
has a basement finished. It's got blinds now. That has substantial amount of value to it. So I'd always go with that. Usually or find a house that's maybe 3 to 5 years old is kind of a sweet spot. Around 10. Yeah, but they're black. You know, they're the dark cabinets. They're not the white.
But I could
You
see,
can paint them for like $1,000, you know?
Cabinets are easy to change out too.
Yeah, those are easy. That's easy stuff. The
The
fundamental
thing you can
fundamental
actually-
layout of the houses haven't changed in 10 years. It's just the colors have changed. But the fundamental layouts of the house are very, very similar. It's not like design differences between
80s.
1950s and, today. It's pretty minimal. So, where you run into trouble with new construction is when we're in this market. Because you buy at today's cost, and if we're in a plummeting market, by the time you go to close, it is people, sometimes supplies go cheaper because no one's buying the supplies. So everything's that economic principle, supply demand. If construction slows down, there's more wood, there's more everything. There's more laborers out there that are willing to work for less. Contractors are begging for the business. I mean, when the economy first turned down and we had a couple construction projects, I mean, those who were still around, because like half of them just had to go find another job, but those who were still around, like they would do it for cheap. They're charging 2 times as much to do the same things now. And that's what we call profit. But also the material costs have gone up substantially.
Yes, they have.
And the labor, pay for that guy to work for you, substantial increases. So, anyways, crazy market, but this is, I would never tell my clients to go and buy a house build a house in a declining market. So a lot of people don't, or what happens is they start to fall out of contract because like they're unmotivated now. One of the ways they lock you in is by making you pay for a large portion of that upgrade cost upfront.
Third.
So if you pay 10 grand for that, plus you have your $2,500 deposit, that's how they lock you in, or that's how they also cover some of their cost if you back out. Now, if you back out, and now they can resell it at this price,
They're okay.
okay, whatever, you back out, go right ahead. One of those lines, I think we'll get through 8.2 today. We're doing a lot more than just the rep C. It's discussing offers. This is also discussing like strategy, negotiation, and how we make offers and what you need to be thinking about. So I can all tell that you wrote copious notes and will remember these things. Okay, so right to cancel, did we read that? Failure to cancel basically says if you don't say anything, it's assumed that you've accepted it and you're moving forward. So you don't ever have to write an email out and say, we're moving forward. Like, you don't have to write it. Now, if you write it, you can just give them assurances, hey, it's all looking good, appraisal came in, we're good.
Caleb's been good about that, just saying, ask for your approval.
Well, that's just, in any transaction, we need communication. It's just him sending out those status updates, like, hey, we got all this stuff, we're final underwriting, hey, we're cleared to close, well, you know, you need to know whether you are.
Important.
Okay, so financing condition 8.3, Andrew.
No financing required. Buyer's obligation to purchase the property is not conditioned upon buyer obtaining financing. If checked, section 8.3B below does not apply. I'm gonna keep going.
Yeah, let's just read that financing required.
B, financing required. Buyer's obligation to purchase the property is conditioned upon buyer obtaining the loan referenced in section 2.1C. This condition is referred to as the financing condition. If checked, section 8.3B 1, 2, and 3 apply. Otherwise, they do not. If this Rep C is not canceled by buyer as provided in section 8.1B or 8.2A, then buyer agrees to work diligently and in good faith to obtain a loan.
Let's keep reading.
All right. Buyer's right to cancel before the financing and appraisal deadline. If buyer, in buyer's sole discretion, is not satisfied with the terms and conditions of the loan, buyer may, after the due diligence deadline, referenced in section 24B, if applicable, cancel the Rep C by providing written notice to seller no later than the financing and appraisal deadline referenced in section 24C, whereupon blank amount of buyer's earnest money deposit shall be released to seller without the requirement of further written authorization from buyer, and the remainder of buyer's earnest money deposit shall be released to buyer without further written authorization from seller. Buyer's right to cancel after the financing and appraisal deadline. If after expiration of the financing and appraisal deadline referenced in section 24C, buyer fails to obtain the loan, meaning that the proceeds of the loan have not been delivered by the lender to the escrow closing office as required under section 3.2, then buyer shall not be obligated to purchase the property, and buyer or seller may cancel the Rep C by providing written notice to the other party. Part 3. Earnest money deposit released to seller. If the Rep C is canceled as provided in section 8.3b2, buyer agrees that all of buyer's earnest money deposit or deposits, if applicable, see section 8.4 below, shall be released to seller without the requirement of further written authorization from buyer. Seller agrees to accept, as seller's exclusive remedy, the earnest money deposit or deposits, if applicable, as liquidated damages. Buyer and seller agree that liquidated damages would be difficult and impractical to calculate, and the earnest money deposit or deposits, if applicable, is a fair and reasonable estimate of seller's damages in the event buyer fails to obtain the loan.
Okay, thank you. Good reading. Okay, what are some of the key points that we learned from this?
To always put 0 in that line.
Not always, but in most cases. So that line is where Gabby got in trouble. So that basically says that after the due diligence period, a certain portion of your money will go non-refundable. So you can put all or just a couple dollars, it's totally up to you. And then, so it's like it's upping the ante. The further you go down, some sellers want to know that you're committed. The longer time they lock the property up, the more they want to know that they're at least going to get something out of this if you cancel.
Yeah, so if you did this, so if you had where you needed longer time, this would motivate them to, say you needed an 8-week close instead of 30-day close.
So this is, they mentioned liquidated damages, is basically
Can't go after
saying
you for any more.
if they accept the earnest money, they can't take you to court. They've accepted liquidated damages. That is covering it. But if they reject the earnest money, then they can take you to court. But then they go back to, well, do you have to arbitrate first, or may at the sole discretion decide? So that's where that contract applies. You say shall or may.
My sister and her husband had to pay, they were going to buy a house and they backed out. And they had to pay $7,000 because the woman was threatening to sue and they just wanted it all to go away.
Yeah. So that's true, is like,
Wow.
you can go to law, but is it worth, it's gonna cost you maybe that much just to go to court.
Yeah. And it was in Iowa and they were in Idaho.
Or somebody that's financially stronger than you will just win because they got more money and
Better
resources,
attorney.
better attorneys, smarter, you know, you name it. So you have this right to cancel, and I like that it says, it didn't say that you had to be denied. It, where's the term?
It's just
Terms
sole
and
discretion,
conditions.
in buyer's sole discretion.
Buyer's sole discretion, I mean, how vague is that? If you just, hey, the interest rate went up an 1/8%.
My cat doesn't like the loan.
Oh, that's pushing it, but.
Well, you would never tell them that, you just say,
Well, I thought I would be happy, but the payment's just too high.
Or the payment's just too meow.
well, that's the thing, you don't have to tell them why, you just say because of the because of the
So is there
financing.
anything we have to provide? Do you
No.
have to provide a denial letter?
No,
No, you do not. And it's pretty vague, so.
they may ask.
Now, generally, you get less pushback on this if you cancel earlier than like
Later.
later, but it is your right. All right,
All right.
8.4, let's read that final one about additional earnest money.
Me?
Julie.
If the REPC has not been previously canceled by the buyer as provided in section 8.1, 8.2, or 8.3 as applicable, then no later than the due diligence deadline or the financing and appraisal deadline, whichever is later, buyer will or will not deliver to the buyer's brokerage an additional earnest money deposit in the amount of this amount. The earnest money deposit and the additional earnest money deposit, if applicable, are sometimes referred to herein as the deposits. The earnest money deposit or deposits, if applicable, shall be credited toward the purchase price at closing.
Yeah. So in our timeline that we put up here, what 8.3B1 says is that after, like if our inspection ended here, after the inspection, let's say I had $1,000 earnest money, and that's refundable, right? I'll say refundable. But after that, I could, let's say I wrote in $500. That means now $500 is non-refundable, and $500 would be,
Refund.
are for refundable. That's what that means. Now, 8.4, so section 8.4 says that after the financing, maybe the seller wants me to up it. Or maybe I'm voluntarily upping it just to give them confidence in me. So if I had 1,000, I have to determine what, it's all negotiable, right? So I have to determine what it is. I literally have a buyer right now who said, well, they came to me and they said, we need a 6-week extension on closing. I said, well, that's a lot. It's the ones I always fight with.
Yeah.
Because I feel like they're always like, why do you need that? Like, seriously, like, that's longer than most closings. Like, why do you need, we just need the time. Are you gonna work for us or not? I'm like, oh, okay, yes, of course I'll ask for you. Of course.
It just would help me in explaining to them.
Yeah. And so it took a little bit of time for them to want to open up to me, but I'm like, they're basically 80 years old. The whole thing caught them by surprise, and they just need more time. But the one key was, we want the house, we just need more time. So, okay, great, I understand. So you're not like doing this because you're backing out or anything, you just want the house, you just need more time. All right, I can explain that.
Mm.
So in explaining that, they said, we'll give you the more time,
You just want more money.
but we need more money. So our earnest money was $2,000. And we had our inspections, and what happened is during the inspections, we came up with a very long list, and they agreed to it. Great. But and so they were starting to work on the fixing of everything. They passed the inspection date, but since we wrote a new addendum, they had till the 27th, today, to fix everything. Well, they gave me an email 3 days ago saying we've repaired everything, and I contacted the buyers, who were a little slow at responding to the request. I said, okay, they fixed everything, and what it was is they had already agreed to addendum 5, which stated, 5 addendums, by the way. Addendum 5, which said that after the inspections were verified, after the repairs are verified, they wanted us to increase the earnest money from $2,000 to $4,000, and all of it
It's not refundable.
is non-refundable after this point. Then we'll give you the 4 weeks extension. Okay, so last night, like, we're getting close to the deadline, right? I texted them, emailed them, left a voice message, and then they call me 2 hours before and they say, we're coming down, we'd like to see the property today at 5 o'clock. You know, we had a family movie last night that I was supposed to be at a 6 o'clock movie with my kids, How to Train Your Dragon. And then they emailed me an hour before, oh, we got delayed because of Greg's doctor appointment. We'll probably be there around 6 o'clock. Okay, that's when I was supposed to be with my family, my movie starts. You know? Okay, so I show up there. They're just old. It's like,
Maybe it's slow.
I gotta walk them around the property. They're asking questions that
I don't
we've
know.
answered a couple times, but I have to be super patient with them. I can't rush them. And so at 7:45, we're done. She wanted to measure every room, so I sat there with a measuring tape, helping her measure. She's like, "What was that again?
I've been there.
What did you say? 8 inches?"
Put that electronic app on your phone to measure the room. It takes 2 seconds. I send it.
It's not
Put it all in notes.
accurate because I actually did that, and it
Uh-huh.
was like 33 inches, and the app said like 35. I'm like, okay. I don't have the new one. Maybe with the infrared it would get better, but yeah, I was just like, great. That's where I need the laser tool. Yep. You know, just put it in the corner,
So
measure
did
it.
they sign it though?
So there was an electrical panel that was supposed to be repaired, and you know, you just open the electrical panel, you can't tell whether it was repaired or not, but they provided an invoice. It's like $360 for the repairs. Like, well, we want to talk to the electrician to make sure that it was done properly and that it was done, that they aren't trying to dupe us or anything. Okay, well, why don't you guys just sign? So there was an addition. I'll just finish the story. So there was an additional addendum 6, which said that they've accepted all the repairs. So they have to acknowledge that the repairs were accepted. And we don't feel comfortable in signing that until after it. Okay, well, when you've talked to the guy, let me know. I'll have the addendum in the, you know, in DocuSign for you, which they're not that great with DocuSign. They usually take a while. I said, but why don't you write me that additional check now so that I have it, so that we don't have to work this out later. I promise I won't deposit it or take your money until after you confirm to me that everything's good. And they confirm, well, they haven't confirmed yet, but they gave that check to me at least. And then I gotta hear from him today. And then our earnest money goes up, we're locked in, and then we'll close in about a month. March 26th. Anyway, so these are real scenarios that I'm telling you, and real things that I currently deal with. And so you gotta be patient with people. You gotta be, it is a little bit frustrating.
Just like Isaac too.
Yeah.
Kinson.
I've literally watched, for different reasons, I've had like 3 opportunities to watch movies, every single one of the last 3 movies, I've been interrupted and had to leave the movie, or came late. It's kinda crazy, I'm like, okay, so, everything happens in 3, so I'm done.
Yeah,
We're
there
good,
you go.
we're good. We're all moving forward, or I just need to learn to turn off my phone, that's all. All right, so that was a fun discussion today. So now you know about the increased and earnest money clauses. You understand new construction appraising a little bit. They don't really order that until about a month before or sooner before the place is done, so they can actually see it. Okay, but it's a lot to think through. We talked a lot about strategy and everything, so we'll keep that this discussion going, so you guys be experts.
Good meeting.
Round of applause.